What's up? It's Phil from Fit World Exposed. In today's episode, I have a very special guest, Rob Waterhouse from the DFAC. It's the Drug Free Athlete Coalition. He's a bodybuilder from the UK, very well respected, very big, very strong, and there's a lot of stuff that we could learn from him. So, welcome aboard, bro.
Thanks for having me, mate. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so you mind just giving a brief introduction to all those who don't know you?
Sure. So obviously I compete over in the UK. Obviously won my pro card in 2013. I've been competing with the BMBF, which is obviously the drug-free federation over here since 2008. So I was 22 when I started my first show, but I've been sort of joined the gym when I was about 15 years old. So I'm 31 now, so obviously about 16 years worth of training so far. And I'm just kind of getting into obviously just working my way through the pro ranks now kind of thing. So I actually compete as a lightweight in the world. So my contest weight is about 163 pounds, so that's about 73 kilos. So I'm quite light for a guy sort of my size or my height really as well. So that always pays dividends in the lightweight classes really. So I obviously so I did my first pro world show in 2013 when I won my pro card and placed fifth in the heavyweights, as it was a light heavyweight split. So I was just too heavy for the lightweight split that year. 2014 had a bit of a crappy contest year, and then obviously took 15 off, and then came back to win the lightweight worlds in 16. And I've just defended it again about 5-6 weeks ago in Miami, and won that one again, which is a lightweight. So but it's been a pretty good year so far. So.
Crazy. So you mind just explaining to the viewers what the big differences between the DFAC and the WNFB?
Yeah, so basically I guess it's like any other thing with federations. So if you want the kind of big story on it really, or kind of how it is in my interpretation, is that if you like, the chairman or the chair lady, if you like, which is Vicky McCann, she runs the BMBF, which is the amateur federation over in the UK. And I think herself didn't have great, how should we say, can't think of the word now, experiences, if you like, with some of the other federations actually competing in. So she's a pro herself. So we've been involved with like the WMBF, the IFPA, and things like that. And there was a few things that basically happened where maybe the drug testing wasn't maybe as kind of up to scratch where it should be. Maybe the rule or the guidelines were slightly different. So we follow WADA, so we abide by all that side of things.
WADA, that's the World Anti-Doping Agency?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
okay.
it. So we obviously follow that to the T. So if the WADA turns around tomorrow and say creatine's banned, then basically we can't take creatine. There's no kind of like, we just pick and choose what we want to do and what we want to, what we want in our drug testing guidelines. So that's the kind of way we run it. So it's not up to us. So if WADA bans something, that's not down to the DFAC to basically argue with. We just have to abide by it. So it's one of them. So I think that I don't know all the ins and the outs really as far as why they set up their own federation, but it's basically that things and that were happening with that, and maybe the judging not kind of how we want to do it. And thought, BMBF is obviously renowned for having such a great standard. It gives the athletes a really good platform on where to compete. So things from the stage lighting to the way the shows are run, it's all kind of the best in the business, if you like, if you want that's just my personal opinion. That's why I've always stayed loyal to the BMBF as far as natural feds go. I've done a few other federations and competed in untested federations as a natural, but that's the only ever natural fed I've ever competed in. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the background of it really. So it's like boxing really. You've got lots of federations, but that's kind of just like they're one of the top federations.
Was a big one.
Yeah.
So you mind explaining to the viewers, like, just how strict is the DFAC? Like, because you said it's affiliated with WADA, and I think WADA is like, they do a lot of stuff with the Olympics. And I know some people in the comment section are gonna be like, how natural is the DFAC?
Sure.
So you mind just explaining like how strict they are? Like, what's the max? Like, what's the biggest supplement you could take? Like, is there like anything more than creatine is like out of the question, or?
Well, with WADA, I mean, you have got some like WADA have like, if you like, what's the word I'm looking for? Substances, if you like, which are kind of like grey areas. Now, that tends to be things like pre-workouts and things like that. It's basically called like banding competition. So it's kind of a funny one, but it'll be something like, which might be like a stimulant, which it may like something like bitter orange peel, which is like you find like the grenade substances and things like that as like a pre-workout or your fat burners. And I think it's something that can bring up like a false positive on a test. So that's why you can't take them in competition. It's not that it would give you an advantage over everyone else. It's just that it can mess other things up, as far as I'm aware anyway. So don't quote me on that. But that's what my understanding of it. But that's about it. I mean, you've got some sort of grey areas, but you've got all the main things as kind of normal athletes. So within the Olympics, sprinters, whatever. And you know, and you obviously have to abide by them guidelines. So the way it works is that with the NBF, they obviously have all their qualifiers through the year. So they'll do random tests, and they'll also drug test every winner out of every category. And then obviously then towards the finals, they drug test all the winners, but then they also polygraph, which obviously is lie detector test, every competitor for that British finals as well. So I mean, that works as a great deterrent as much as anything else. But there's been lots of people who have failed and come back with, you know, obviously not being able to compete in the shows because of that. So they do catch people. So it's kind of like, I think it's one of them ones where my argument always is kind of like saying, oh, how natural is the DFA?
Yeah.
But the thing is, my understanding is, why would anyone ever want to sort of cheat in a drug-free sport where you're not gaining anything from it? So for me, okay, like let's say, so I turned pro 2013. You know, the cost of what you win in prize money at a natural show compared to what you would do, obviously, you know, for what it costs you to get there. So regards to your flights, accommodation, what you spend on food prep for the year,
Of course.
It's kind of like, I always just think, you know, someone says to me, you know, why do you stay natural? Why don't you just go and compete, you know, in a drug tested, you know, or how should we say, like a what's the word I'm looking for?
Another federation with
an assisted federation, you know. So not, and it's just kind of like, well, if I was going to take something, I would then just go and compete in an untested fed. There's no point me as a natural competing other naturals, beating them after taking something and then saying, oh, like, well, I've just beaten a load of these guys up. What have you really gained from that, you know? So that was kind of like, that's my own kind of personal preference. But I think in any sport, you're going to get cheats and that kind of stuff. But it's just a lot of, it's not like we're talking about the Olympics where, you know, these guys get paid, you know, £100,000 a year or $100,000 a year to train and to be athletes. That's why them guys are going to take that, because they can live that lifestyle. And for me, you know, I work 6 days a week, do you know what I mean? And, you know, 10-hour days. I'm not ever getting from natural bodybuilding like that. So
I think the thing with natural bodybuilding is obviously it's not, at least as far as I'm concerned, it's not as much money because they spend so much on, like, you know, the drug tests and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like a lot of natural bodybuilders, they do it for like the love of the sport, you know, if you want to call it a sport, and the fact that this is what the body could attain naturally, you know. Because even when people get on, like, you know, low test or like they get on like small cycles, people are still like, hey, well, what could you really get naturally, you know? And just to viewers watching, like, he's a great testimonial of, you know, I don't know how you start off with your genetics, but Rob's a great testimonial of something that you could expect naturally, you know. And on this channel, I'm throwing high expectations for you guys, but I'm not throwing them so high that you're just gonna be depressed, you know. And if you look at Rob, I'm gonna post a link in the description box of his Instagram page, and you're gonna see some photos of him in the off season. So for all the people who like the leaner look, that's a drug-free lifter in stage ready in off season, you know. So you could see like how he looks at a higher body fat, how he looks leaner, and it's great. You know, the guy's been training like 16 years, he said. So
that's it.
It's impressive, you know.
That's it. Thanks, man. I forgot, what were you just talking about before? I've just lost track where I was. I was about to say something, but you were just talking about before that. Can't remember now.
I don't know, but I'm not sure. But
I'll come back.
I made a video with my buddy Alpha Destiny the other day, and we're talking about what the biggest naturals all have in common, you know. And the number one thing that we've noticed is all the biggest naturals that we know, they've been training for at least a solid decade or more, you know. And when I say training, I'm not saying like push-ups in the park for 3 years. I'm talking like you're on a serious like strength and conditioning program. And once again, like you're a testimonial that you've been in the gym for 16 years, you know.
That's it.
So it's
So
like
what I
that,
was going was
yeah.
what always makes me laugh is that how anyone wants to apply. Let's say, for example, let's take that you're a marathon runner, and you're good at marathon. Let's say I want to become a marathon runner and I'm going to go race against someone like, the top in the world, the Kenyans. Where everyone looks at natural bodybuilding, it's kind of like, so if I go and train with my genetic makeup to be a marathon runner, I'm never ever going to be any good. So I'm naturally a born sprinter, more based towards that kind of genetics and that kind of thing. But with bodybuilding, no one applies that kind of that kind of logic. It's kind of like, they just want to believe, well, this guy's natural. There's no way he's natural because he's that size. But some people are obviously gifted to put on muscle, just like some people are gifted to play, snooker or pool. They just to have a better hand-to-eye coordination and all that kind of stuff. But with bodybuilding, no one kind of wants to believe that that's the case. And that's what always makes me laugh. You think, well, I was kind of, the very first day I ever walked into a gym, I was able to do kind of, 125-pound bench press, something like that, or 50-kilo bench press. So the very first day I walked into a gym. So it's kind of like, you kind of look at that and think, well, if you were to adapt that to any other sport, no one would just be able to believe that they would be able to come like a really decent high-level marathon runner if they've always done other things. So it's kind of like, why doesn't anyone ever play that logic? But that's kind of my take on it. Like, so guys are just more gifted to put on genetics, just like someone else is going to be good with numbers or anything like that. So no matter how much I learn and try to study, I'm never going to be good at maths that way. So it's kind of the genetic traits in your makeup. That's how it applies to obviously all your decent naturals. I'm sure if you looked at any kind of like top IFBB pro, I'm sure if they hadn't gone the assisted route, they would be very good naturals as well. It's kind of like that's logic. And same with the naturals. If they did cross over, they probably would be IFBB pros. That's the there's obviously other things that come into it. How well your body responds to drugs and all that kind of stuff. But I mean that's that kind of foundation, if you like, is pretty evident, to be honest.
Of course.
So.
But speaking of like numbers and stuff, because I know the audience can ask in the comment section, you mind just telling us your height,
Sure.
your height and your weight and your body fat percentage in the off season and
Sure.
stage ready.
So I'm 5'9", so obviously 31. Body fat percentages wise, I never really take them, but I can give you kind of an idea of kind of over contest weight. I think the most I've ever been over contest weight in an off season is about 30 kilos, which would be, what is it? That's 45 pounds is 20. So obviously another part on top of that. So, I mean, anywhere from kind of like 4 or 5 stone over contest weight is the biggest I've ever been. So I compete at 165. So I've been well over 220 in an off season. But I'm fat at that. Like, don't get any illusions that I actually look good at that. That's just, I've always had a problem keeping any shape kind of thing in the off season. So anywhere kind of like sort of, about 20, 25 pounds over contest weight, I still look all right, which is kind of where I am now. It's kind of going to competed in like the start of November.
Wait, so you said 165 in the off season, in stage ready?
Yeah.
And 220 off season.
Yeah.
And when you're 220, do you know what the body fat is around?
Yeah, it's high, very high. Over 20.
It's over 20?
At least, yeah. I mean, I've never been one of them guys who actually said it. I'm fairly strong in the off season at that weight. I guess, weight moves weight kind of thing. But I mean, even like, week after show, like people have this kind of realization, I guess, or I guess thoughts that kind of like have 2 different contest diets as far as an off season and an in season diet. I don't eat the same foods all year round, just a lot more and then bits and pieces on top. So I never binge, I don't just kind of like, I'm just going to go there and have, 6 plates of Chinese kind of thing, or 2 pizzas.
Yeah.
I have pieces here and there, and it's kind of like, but I can almost get fat on diet food. So I'm a high carb diet.
So you're still eating clean, but it's just like, well,
bits on top. Yeah, and I've always just found that my weight just rockets. No matter what I do, that's just kind of like what I'm at peace with now. So it doesn't really matter what you look like in an off season, as long as you can produce the goods and you can get the weight off, when you're in shape. So, so as I said, the biggest I've ever been over is about sort of 50 pounds over, something like that, in an off season, and that took me, probably the best part 10 months to get it off. to being kind of stage ready. So there's no kind of like, 12, 16 week diets. It takes me a long time. Even this year, I started dieting on January the 7th, and I competed in Worlds at November the 4th, November the 2nd.
Okay.
So we're talking 10, 11 months of transformation. We're not talking, let's get ready for a show, 16 weeks, here we go,
So how many months do you stay at 220 for? And also when you're on stage,
Depends if
when
I'm
you're,
off. If I'd taken the year off, I mean, what am I now? So I'm going to take next year off. So I'm kind of, I'm about 28 pounds over contest weight, and I could probably sit at that quite comfortably for a good while. But then I guess I'm only really at the sort of top end of kind of like maybe 3-4 stone over. Probably for about 2 or 3 months at kind of like the highest of like that. But it's almost trying to like actually curb it. I'm not actually trying to push that food in so much that the weight is just rocketing all the time. It just kind of gets there after that long duration, So, and every off season's been different. I've not been as big as that in other years, but it's kind of like towards the end, I kind of think, well, I'm dieting soon. I'll maybe push the food up a little bit more to allow me to diet on a few more calories, that kind of thing. But yeah, I am one of these that is kind of like, you wouldn't kind of know that I kind of carried that kind of shape on stage in an off season if you kind of saw me training in the gym. It would just kind of be like, who's this fat guy? I look more like a powerlifter than I do a bodybuilder. So, the small weights and everything that comes are right down to the end. But as I said, it's a long transformation that takes. So there's time.
yeah. But when you're on stage though, like at 165, do you know like around what body fat is that? Like, do you think like
Probably
6%?
sub 6. I'd say.
Sub 6?
I guess if you look at people who've been having like more like the DEXA scans and things like that, I think people kind of they like to believe that it's lower than they are. Like some people would look at that and go, "Oh, it must be like 2%." But if you just even got a 1% in each body part, you're kind of looking at 6-7%. So to really be that lean, I think on paper it's kind of like the fitness world says, okay, you're 2%. It's not. So it's probably it's sub 6 probably. Everything's in at that stage. It's probably the best I've ever been this year, and it was the lightest I've ever been this year in about 3-4 years. So I was actually heavier as a junior than what I was as 10 years later. So people think they're going to put all this weight on. I think I competed as a junior about 172, 173 pounds, like that. So I've probably come down like another 8 or 9 pounds, obviously better condition, but obviously more tissue on the frame, but you're just able to get leaner and leaner that many times you do it, I think. So so that's the kind of the big realization, and it's the same with clients, how people shows and things like that. And they kind of think in an off season they might put 5 or 10 pounds on of muscle, but you just don't. For the last since 2009, I've been pretty much competing at the same weight. So you just get a better.
Just get leaner and leaner and leaner. Okay. So do you think after 16 years of training, like let's say like this bottle is like your potential, and like the top is like tapped out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
think you're like how much muscle do you think you have to add like to your frame at this point?
I think it's more of a case of quality and in the right areas as well. So, for me, my biggest sort of flaws have always been back and hamstrings, and it's no kind of fault of my own. When I first got into training, I didn't enjoy training back. I didn't get a good connection with the back. I was very arm dominant, and and the kind of the hamstring workouts were kind of token effort, 2 sets of curls at the end of a quad workout. So there was no mistake of why that happened to my physique. So the whole kind of like off-season improvement has always been bringing up them 2 areas. So I train hamstrings twice a week and I train back twice a week. So and it's been thought that's the areas I've improved on as much balance my physique out more and give me more better proportions all over. So that's kind of, I think a lot of the thing is that I've put quality on in the right areas, not so much that I've just gained the good body parts that were already good. Yes, they've got better, but the other thing has been obviously train more to bring the whole package up, and that's why I obviously score well in shows. I have a very good balance physique, but it's symmetrical. And you're trying to get everything in proportion. That does take time and honesty to look at your own physique and know what that is. So
Yeah.
kind of it's the quality rather over kind of just like where do I need to put mass on, and that's the areas you fill out.
So you just talked about how your back, you didn't feel like the best connection because you said you're a bit more arm dominant.
Yeah.
I'm actually like the complete opposite. I'm more like torso, everything, and like arms, it's like really hard for me. But
Yeah.
this is a very important question, and also a very requested question. It's why do you think that some people can have a proper mind muscle connection with certain muscles, but they could have it automatically with others without trying much? Is it genetics? Is it the muscles that you really started training at a young age? Is it because of sports? So in other
Yeah.
words, why do certain muscles fire so easily, but
Yeah.
then there's other muscles where it's like you really have to like pre-exhaust them, work on your mind muscle connection, like close your eyes and just
Yeah.
really put a conscious effort.
I mean, I honestly think it comes with time of training, if I'm really honest. I mean, as I said, when I first got into it, it was kind of like things like back are quite a common one, I think, because you can't really see those muscles when you're working them. It's not like your arms, sort of, and you can do that. So I think back's probably the most common one, and obviously people do struggle with things like legs. But yes, I think genetics do play a massive part, especially with things like origin and insertions of muscle. So the way that you kind of put together. So if you've got a high lat insert, like a Dennis Wolf scenario, you're always going to find it hard to build a great back because you just kind of these almost muscles don't insert in the right areas, kind of thing. So that's why that someone like Phil Heath, for example, is so well put together that way that he doesn't need to be as big as the other guys because basically everything fits into the right compartment, if you like. So, I mean, I guess I don't really know why people obviously struggle with it, mind-to-muscle connection, but I mean, I always know for me, from personal preference, it was always just kind of like, I just didn't enjoy training back, I wasn't strong with back, but it's now become one of my favourite body parts to train, and I think a lot of that comes to basically the time you spend with it. So after 10 years of training, the way I trained maybe when I was 20 compared to the way I train now is completely different. And me and one of my fellow pros and friends, Andrew Patel, was always talking about if you was to have a conversation with, your 20-year-old self, would you be kind of like embarrassed or funny with the way that you train now? So in that respect, it was always very much like balls to the wall. And I'm not saying I train hard now, but it's almost kind of a bit reckless when you're kind of that age. And I think that's what takes time. So, I can go pick up, a set of 7-kilo dumbbells and do a set of lateral raises and get a pump almost straight away. Now, that never happened when I was 20. It took a long time for you to, really engage that. So I guess it's like time under the bar, really, and time in the gym, and where you will find that you will get, if you really persist with them body parts, you will find that you get a better connection because you're doing it more often. It's just a time scenario,
Okay.
rather than it's actually a kind of like a mind to muscle thing. It's just because you've maybe not done it long enough.
So you're saying it's one of those things where you could read all the stuff you want, but you really just have to be like in the gym, just trying out new stuff and just.
That's the problem. I think that back when I was 20, we didn't have Facebook. Well, we did have Facebook. It was only just coming around really, but kind of like. I used to sort of rush to the shop to buy, the latest, muscle magazine and that kind of stuff, and trying to get all the knowledge that way. But today's society, people kind of want it because of Instagram and all that kind of social media stuff. People want to be big now, and they want to be instantly kind of like have that experience. So I was very lucky. I actually work for a company. We promote health clubs, so we go all around the UK and we work 6 weeks in a different gym. So we always have the luxury of kind of using different gym equipment, but you're obviously meeting staff and personal trainers and that kind of thing. And they kind of, there's got a lot of young lads that you'll meet. They're kind of like, oh, what do you do for this? And, what do I do for this sort of thing? And it's just kind of like, I've obviously had the time to do that over that like, long period. And it's kind of like, now where it's kind of like more fashionable, but the guys, when I was 20, didn't even have that kind of like, it was only in the hometown kind of thing, and you find, other people who may be just starting to get into training and that kind of thing. But now it's everywhere. You go to the expos and things like that, and some of the teenagers and even clients and stuff I help, they're in phenomenal shape. At that such a young age, so it's kind of like perspective, I think. Yeah.
You're saying nobody just wants to give it time and just respect the process.
Yeah.
They just want it now.
Where society, people want it now. It's kind of like it's just. That's why I think people will more skirt away from the kind of natural bodybuilding route now, because they want instant muscle. They want to be like the big guy in the gym. So maybe they will be pushed more onto, and it's probably more ready available now. There's obviously going to be at least, 2 or 3 guys in your gym maybe who, side of things. So it is very easy to sort of fall into that. Just taking you off. When I first started, and you were saying about, sort of staying natural and that kind of thing. We just had, it was almost unheard of. We didn't even realize the guys in the magazine were taking drugs. You know, it was just kind of like we had no one around who kind of, in the little gym I trained in, who kind of had any knowledge of it either. So I guess if you maybe brought up into a gym today where, you know, it was kind of like the norm, just kind of like it was getting the membership, you know, people are going to be more influenced. And, you know, who knows? Would I have been? I don't know. But I mean, one of them things, you know.
But what are some, besides just the time, because that's a great point and an obvious one too, but what are some other tips you could give the viewers and even myself on how to improve mind-muscle connection? Like, is it like closing your eyes? Is it like maybe like a nutrition tip? Maybe someone's lacking in a certain department?
Definitely nutrition. I think that, I mean, if you kind of put the sort of main three scenarios in of kind of like, you know, your water, your carbohydrates and salt, those three things are going to help with obviously getting a better pump in the gym. So if you're on a, like say, a contest diet and you're going very low carb, you're not going to expect to get great pumps in the gym. So, and that's kind of a lot of it, what it is. I mean, there's little things you can do for each body parts and things like that. Like my typical back workout will always start with like sections or, you know, lat pull down. So some kind of like nice movement, which you get a bit of blood in there nice and quickly. You know, I wouldn't really like sort of start my workouts with a deadlift because it's obviously very, very sort of, you know, full body tax, and I want to get a nice pump on the lat. That's kind of what I would do. So I think that you do have to, I think you have to kind of not worry so much about kind of the weightlifting when you've got a mind to muscle connection problem. That's one thing I actually took off one of my other mates who's overall world champion, Nathan Williams. He was saying to me about, you know, I was like, you know, I really want to improve my back. What sort of things do you do? And he's probably got the best back in natural bodybuilding, no joke, if you look him up.
What's his name?
Nathan Williams.
Nathan Williams.
It's like a mini Phil Heath from the back. Yeah, I mean, the rear double bicep is absolutely crazy. If you ever stood at the back of the stage and he's hitting a front double bicep,
oh yeah,
Jesus man, it's game over. But he was always saying that it's basically the mind to muscle connection. It's just basically doing you know, some more detail work and not worry so much about like the weightlifting. So like things like reverse pec deck. So just doing like, you know, for rear delts and squeezing more on the muscle, and rather than trying to get 24 plates on a bent over row, you know, like do it one and just do a few sets where you really are squeezing the muscle and not kind of worried. Even if you do it as a separate day, so you might do one heavy back day and the other day might do a bit more detail work. There's things you can do like that, you know, to really kind of the detail side of things is kind of lifting a little bit lighter and squeezing a little bit more and thinking about what you're doing really. So that would be my advice, to be honest.
It's true. It's like, but then once you get that mind muscle connection, then you can start going heavier, you know. But at first, you're right.
Yeah,
at first, you have to get it. Then like, it's funny because there's a lot of people who, actually, a lot of my subscribers, believe it or not, and like, they kind of laugh. Not all of them, but there's a few here and there who like laugh at the mind muscle connection. Like, wow, it's overrated. You know, if you're lifting this much weight, you're gonna have a big X muscle group. Like, you don't have to feel it, just get the weight from point A to point B. And like, I used to think like that, but at the same time, I think that like bodybuilders are big, like, especially natural bodybuilders like yourself, like, they all talk about the mind-muscle connection, you know? Sure. And if you combine the mind-muscle connection with heavy weights for high reps,
sure,
like, you're gonna grow like crazy, you know?
I think that if you have the same conversation with that person 10 years down the line, and you ask them if they still feel the same way, that's the biggest difference that you'll get from an experienced lifter to a beginner. Because as I said, I can walk in and put a plate on the bar and do a set of bench press, and I've got a chest pump. And it was just unheard of when I was, you know, first started training. It was kind of like, wow, that's it, because you can't even almost explain it until you've got it. And so, you know, you feel it right deep in the muscle. You don't just kind of just say,
yeah, you have to feel the muscle, you know?
People who are moving weight from A to B are usually the people who end up with the most injuries and never develop their physique in the right way. So, you know, as I said, if someone to say that's kind of like a bit of a joke, then, as I said, have that conversation with yourself 10 years down the line and then still think if you were right or not, you know? And if someone just wants to sort of train that way with kind of like not being methodical and not thinking about what they're doing and not looking at, you know, the attention to detail with it, you know, that's probably why they're going to end up with a shitty physique at the end of it. You know, so that's because they're not paying attention to the guy who is maybe, and obviously there's the flip side that is almost too much control and not using enough weight.
Well, that's it.
not what I'm saying, but it's kind of like it's definitely a fine line between it. You know, you
It's
have to
about
use
finding
enough weight.
that balance between the heavy weights and like mind muscle.
Yeah,
Like
you've got to put the weight on the bar to stimulate their muscle groups, but at the right time. So, I mean, I think that my sort of biggest example when I was in my 20s again, I think the best bench press I did when I was sort of in my 20s was about 120 kilos. So that's like 220 pounds for you guys. It's 100. So it's something like whatever it is, 250, something like that. But the rep, if I'd had a video of it now, I'd probably be appalled of it. I was probably not surprised it didn't crack any ribs when I was doing it. It was bouncing off the chest and that kind of thing. Whereas the weight I'm able to use now is not a significant amount more, but the quality of how it looks on the rep.
well, exactly, yeah.
Completely different. So yeah, so that's one of the things. But as I said, it's kind of like, that's only what they'll get with time, that they'll look at and go, Jesus, when I was 20, I was
That's
a bit of an arsehole.
I don't want to talk about myself here, but like a good example on my end was when I was just in that phase of just heavy weight, and like without much mind muscle connection,
Yeah.
I used to do like I had an adjustable dumbbell, and I did like dumbbell rows, like dead stop, like off the floor, whatever. It was like a 300-pound dumbbell, and I did like 3-4 reps, and I'm like, okay, well, where's my big back? It's 300 pounds in the dumbbell row.
Yeah.
With like horrendous form. But now it's like you fast forward to like today, and it's like I'm not even using anything close to that. Like maybe like a lot less on like something like a medals row, but like I feel it on every rep. I'm getting better squeezes, I'm getting better stretches, and it's just like, and I'm still lifting like somewhat heavy,
Yeah, Mum. How long have you been training yourself?
How long have I been? I've been in the gym for like maybe 5 years.
Okay, cool.
Maybe
so
five and a half, but like I don't really count all of them,
Yeah, that's it. And
Like-
you're sort of obviously by no means beginner, but it's kind of that intermediate level where you're kind of getting into a bit of more advanced stuff. But same again, in that 5 years again later, you'll go like, wow, like the stuff I know now, it's kind of like, I wish I had that when I started. And that's why I always think things like having like a coach and things like that, like as much as kind of there's a lot of bad ones out there, God, I wish I had someone to tell me all the stuff I know now when I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like make all the mistakes for myself and really realize that over time. Like I wish I was able to implement like things like the nutritional side of things. Like, man, I didn't even eat properly for probably the first 3-4 years of training. I didn't have a clue about it. It was just kind of like, you have to eat enough protein. That was it. And, that was it. I just basically just lived on chicken all the time. And, an ounce of carb in my diet kind of thing. So, and he was eating sort of 3 meals a day. So it's kind of like, people now, they have so much more ready available knowledge and things like that. So there's almost sort of no excuses not to be doing things right,
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we just talked about like the basics of, natural bodybuilding, just general questions. Now I want to dive more into like the training aspect,
Sure.
So like to the viewers watching, Rob's not like a power lifter or strongman. This is like bodybuilding talk, mind muscle connection, constant tension, all that good stuff. So that's the kind of stuff we'll be diving into. So it's gonna be blitz style. We're just gonna blast through questions as fast as possible, and so let's start with the back because we're just talking about back. So what's your take on targeting the lower lats with rowing variations?
Okay, I think body position for some of it. So like I kind of do, or I have been doing, if you like, a kind of like a lower and upper back workout. So obviously would do like a normal deadlift. I've actually not been able to deadlift for about 8 months now. Had a little bit of a sciatic problem in my lower back, which is basically true. And it's kind of not been a bad thing. I've just been basically doing like 2 proper back workouts, but there'll be either T-bar rows or heavy bent over rows on the first day, and then more kind of like width and like heavy chin movements on the other day. So just depending on how things go really, and where I'm also training, because I say I'm in a different gym every 6 weeks. So that can kind of obviously can work really in my favour, or it can be a little bit more difficult to have to kind of stick to really basic stuff. But as far as you go, lower back stuff, I think my lower back workouts is basically deadlifts. It'd be about 10 sets of deadlifts, so it would be kind of like a pyramid up. So it might be like a 12, 10, 8, 6, 5, 3, and then a heavy back down set. So let's say I've worked up to 200 kilos for a single on a deadlift. I might then do like 140 for 15 to 20 reps straight after that last set. So that was kind of the main basis of the workout. And then just something like a single 1-arm row, like quite high into like low into the hip. So more
Okay.
obviously looking at lowering the lats, and that's kind of like my bread and butter for that. And then maybe just finish with like a little bit more of a sort of a like a low pulley row, that kind of machine, or a machine row. So you're only really talking 3 exercises from my lower back day, but it's still, you know, a good hour to hour and 10-minute workout with the amount of sets of deads and things like that you do
For lower lats.
for lower lats. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
What
yeah,
about
go on.
what about let's talk about like the pullover variation, right? Pullover is like on a flat bench, you know, like when you lie your upper back across.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people do them with, you know, they do it in the constant tension fashion, so they'll probably start the dumbbell at around like forehead level,
Yeah.
and then they lower it, like, but it doesn't touch the ground, you know, just keeping constant tension on it.
Yeah.
Do you find that this is the best way to do pullovers if you don't have the Nautilus pullover machine, or do you rather do it on a decline or a cable?
Probably on a cable, to be honest, because I do think, especially if you've not got great shoulder joints, like if you've got shoulder niggles, almost depending on where you put your hips, there's a lot of chest movement in it as well. So I think if you have a good mind to muscle connection, something like a dumbbell pullover is great. It is a really good exercise. But you probably find someone may get far more out of it as a kind of, you know, on a cable. But even still, I don't think they're not really great. They're more detail moves for me. I would never look at that as like my compound back workout. So that's
No.
not what is going to give you a great back. Well, they always talked about it in kind of like, you know, golden era type stuff. That's what, you know, Arnold did loads of them. But I do think, as I said, it's kind of like it wouldn't be my go-to for kind of like
No,
this.
of course.
Back.
It's just like this, like pump work and stuff, you know.
Yeah, but it's like a great finishes, like a, you know, like a cable pull downs, like with like a lat pull down bar, so a long bar rather than a short bar. We actually did a strength camp with Milos Sarkev over in the UK. Do you know Milos? He used to prep all the IFBB pros.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
And he took us through some training camp thing, and he actually gave us some really nice movements like that. So you've got kind of like there was like a pull version where you lay on an incline bench with your chest on the front, and you pull the lat pull down bar into the body. So it's kind of like a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
And we set those with a nice far bent over pull down into the abdomen. And that's a really nice pump lat finisher for sure. So that's what would be more kind of what I would work with rather than say like a dumbbell pullover, because it's niggly on the shoulders. If you're tight in the back and the chest, it's not a nice movement to actually get, you know, you kind of risk for a reward for me, to be honest. So
Okay, so instead of standing, your preference would be you just go on an incline bench and you could isolate the lats even more that way.
yeah, as a movement, I do like it standing just far bent over rather than more upright. So actually, almost sort of 45 degrees. So yeah.
Okay, so let's talk more of the bigger lifts now, because obviously you talked a lot of like a lot of powerlifters are like, hey, the only way to build a big back for the most part, you have to do your heavy deadlifts. But if you look at a lot of bodybuilders, you look at guys like I don't know, John Meadows, you look at I don't know like who to name right off the bat, but a lot of bodybuilders, you know, they do a lot of rack pulls right below the kneecap.
Yeah.
For the back, and then for the lower half, they'll do RDLs for the hamstrings, you know. So then you're probably thinking, people are thinking like, hey, what about the deadlift? And a lot of bodybuilders, they don't do the deadlift because they don't think it hits one area particularly well. What's your thoughts on this?
Mixed reviews based on my own experiences. So I think year one my pro card, or the leading up to my pro card, I'd spent 2 years like deadlifting every week without fail, following deadlifting programs, things like that. And it definitely gave me some more back thickness. There's no doubt about that. But over the last 2 years, not being able to deadlift as much, it's a risk for reward scenario. If you're completely no lower back problems, and you know, the deadlift is a comfortable lift for you. Like, I'm quite short in the arm, so I'm not going to be a good deadlifter. I'm a good bench presser and I'm a good shoulder presser, but I'm never going to be a good deadlifter. Just because of, like, you know, genetic makeup as far as, you know, your lever length, that kind of thing. There's no doubt, you know, you see, you know, good deadlifters always tend to be very long in the arm and short in the torso. So it's kind of a you know, just a simple physics scenario, if you like. So if you get a lot out of the deadlift and you feel that actually that your back's getting sore the next day in the right areas, not just the lower back, you know, not on your spine, but actually, you know, the muscles itself, even the lats.
Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely a good movement to have in, but I think you can get as much just out of like a decent rack pull. with a good negative as well, not just sort of throwing weight around. But it's something that I definitely still want to include in my routines. So I'm not saying I don't want to do it, but I just found that I had just as much progress without doing them, because I was just training back twice a week still. But I was doing more heavy bent over rows and heavy T-bar rows. So I
T-bars,
think that still getting a lot of stimulation that way. I might go up to, 3.5 plates on a bent over row, whereas my deadlift, I'm struggling with 4 plates aside. So it's kind of, for me, it's not, I would much rather do a heavy bent over row than a dead. So it's kind of, I think you have to look at that, and it's definitely a good movement to have in. It's just risk for reward. If you're getting problems in your back the next day, then it's kind of, by all means, pick a different exercise.
That's the thing, and I'm not against the deadlift either.
Sure.
But from I still think you should have some pulls off the floor. In my opinion, I think the snatch grip deadlift for upper back, like, that's a great pull off the floor. But from my experience, like, I've deadlifted for years, my back was never like. It's only in the last year that it really started to come up. But I still think the deadlift has its place, but it's not like the conventional deadlift. You can still build a great back without doing a conventional deadlift. Like, if you do snatch grip deadlifts and rack pulls and RDLs and stuff like that.
I mean, there's a lot of IFBB pros. I mean, how often do you ever really see, like, apart from the Dallas videos and things like that, how do you actually see many people doing really heavy deadlifts? Like, there's not a lot. It's
rare.
It's so it just goes to show you can build great backs regardless. When was the last time you ever saw Phil Heath doing big deadlifts? And he's he's got the best back on the planet. So
that's it. It's cutting off. Yeah. Okay, so it's cutting off a little bit. It's fine.
That's right.
Yeah, you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so we just went over back. Let's move down towards the body. Let's go more towards delts, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on you just talked about Phil Heath, he has the biggest back. He doesn't do deadlifts. Well, Kevin Levrone, if I'm pronouncing it properly, he hands down has some of the most impressive delts in bodybuilding history, and he really popularized the behind the neck press.
Yeah.
And I've been playing around with this lift, and I could personally tolerate it pretty well. But what's your thoughts on it? Like, for someone who could tolerate well, they have good shoulder mobility, they have good flexibility.
Sure.
Do you think it's actually it's really worth it? Like, do you think the extra rear delt stimulation you're getting is do you think it's overrated or?
I think it does. It depends on a number of factors. I think one is it a safe movement for you if you train on your own? So, like, the pick off and actually doing the movement are two completely different things. So if you've got a good training partner and that kind of stuff, and even actually where you're doing the exercise. So if you've got I know there's some quite nice like hammer strength, like seated, made up machines for a behind the neck press. Then yeah, great. I've got one in the gym I'm in at the moment, and it's a really nice setup. But you don't often find them a lot of gyms, so they're having to kind of makeshift it around a normal bench or whatever, or behind the head or whatever. I mean, I know Dorian always done them and that kind of stuff as well. So definitely great, but it's no kind of scenario for me is that it's risk for reward again.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel the movement great if you're feeling it in the joint rather than the muscle, then by all means, why are you doing it?
Mm-hmm.
So I've always done lots of overhead pressing, barbell, and lots of dumbbell pressing. Probably more dumbbell pressing than anything else. I've maybe done a little bit more. I followed like the 5-3-1 for quite a while, for about sort of 9 or 10 months, and I got good at overhead pressing on a barbell. But as far as for me, it's definitely more the
risk versus reward.
Pressing. Yeah, so risk for reward again. Instead, and everyone's different. So if you've got shoulder niggles and you're doing that kind of expect you put 100 kilos on that bar, you're gonna expect that maybe it's gonna cause you some problems if it feels it. But it's same again. Where do you feel it most in the muscle itself, like in the belly of the muscle, or are you feeling it on your joints? It's kind of that's the same thing.
So speaking of the dumbbell press, because you just spoke about it, I just made a video talking about it, and I want to know your take on the dumbbell press. You see a lot of bodybuilders who they have the dumbbell like basically their elbow and their fist is lined up.
Yeah.
So, when people want to lift extra heavy, they get the bicep and forearm and trap involved, so they do like this, Yeah. But then you see a lot of bodybuilders, they have like the fist and the elbow lined up. And it's kind of like they're doing a military press with dumbbells. It's kind of like,
Okay, yeah.
Do you do it like that too?
I use a really good range of motion, so I come to about the bottom of my ear, so I'm about here. So it's an in-between rather than it being right with shoulder back. I think that you are going to incorporate maybe slightly more rear delts in the movement if your elbows are further back. But same again, it's comfort. So, I mean, I always actually do my rear delt press, my dumbbell presses on a slightly more declined bench. So when I first got in training, it was always doing them really upright, but I always feel it in my lower back when I do that. So obviously you get a sort of decent weight, and that's when we feel it in the wrong areas again. So just by knocking that bench, you know, a small bit back, everyone will say, "Oh, that looks like it's more up the chest," but I'm telling you, you'll definitely get better delt activation on that on a really high incline, and you won't really feel it in your chest.
I found that too. And you can lift heavier too.
Yeah, definitely that. So, and it's not even an ego thing. It's a more comfortable position, you know, handle a bit more better weight and, you know, some good form. So, and also getting the weights from A to B as well, especially if you train your own. Like I pretty much, you know, 99% of the time I train on my own. So, you know, for me to flick a 50 up on a dumbbell, which would be a 120-pound dumbbell or whatever it might be, then, you know, that's difficult when the bench is really upright.
Upright, okay.
Flick them into position when it's slightly more declined. So
do you still do any like upright, like, or is it exclusively for dumbbell presses, like
always
high incline?
On like a high incline, yeah, not on a.
Okay.
I sometimes do some dumbbell presses like in a giant set, maybe with no back support whatsoever. So I'm doing a lot of core exercise as well. So just basically sat up on the end of a bench with a dumbbell in that position, and that's quite a nice finish. You can only use like a 20-kilo dumbbell, so like a 45-pound dumbbell. But that's absolutely nails. You do that in a giant set with like some laterals and things like that in there, and that's really tough exercise, to be honest. You kind of feel like, how am I able to use like a 20-kilo dumbbell? But it's a completely different scenario when you do it in that position with no back support whatsoever, just your feet on the floor, you know.
I personally found that for the dumbbell presses, like my delts were stalling a bit at one point. Then I took the dumbbell presses and I really upped the reps instead of just doing your regular 10s.
Yeah.
There's some 15s and some 20s. So what's the highest rep range you'll ever work up to with dumbbell shoulder presses?
With presses themselves, probably.
With dumbbell shoulder press.
Yeah, about 10s. I mean, like any compound movements, I pretty much stick with like a 6 to 8 scenario. And if I've particularly got a decent amount of reps, I might go to 10s. But if I've hit 10, I'd usually go up again. So I kind of pyramid up with my dumbbell sort of shoulder presses. And then anything isolation-wise, I might go as high as 15. But most of the time, my training ranges are all really 6 to 8 on pretty much everything, to be honest, apart from the odd few, you know, sort of like drop sets and things like that, really. So
speaking of isolation work, what are your top 3 favorite lateral raise variations, if you had to pick?
So yeah, a normal, like a seated or standing lateral raise. With like I'll always throw in, it's kind of what my sort of go-to is ascending and descending, like a drop set. So let's say, for example, like your 3 sets of lateral raises would basically be a normal set of 6, and then you'd have a drop set where you can go maybe say 10 kilo or 12 kilos, 10 kilo dumbbells, so 6 and 6, so 12 reps. And then the last one would be basically a light to heavy to light. So you'd go 10 kilos, 12 kilos, back to 10s, and then a 6 and a 5, all 6 reps all the way through. So you're doing kind of like 24 reps or so, but it's still kind of heavy, and you sort of just differentiation between the high and low. But that's pretty nails, to be honest. So that would always be like my first choice. Is like a lot of lateral raises. I think it gives you that nice cap on the delts. A front raise single arm, I always do that with like thumbs up. And then like usually I find 2 or 3 reverse fly movements usually I do in my shoulder workout. So whether that be a pec deck, you know, a reverse pull, and usually like on an incline bench with my chest on the front, and like a high pull, so more of like a compound movement for it, and then like 2 isolation moves, so like a heavy pull with a bar, that kind of stuff. So that's quite nice.
Well, for the lateral raises, though, I want to know, like, well, let's say if you're doing it standing up, right? Do you bring the dumbbells like kind of like Kevin Levrone does it, where it's like they kind of touch, like you bring it kind of in front of you?
I bring mine in front. Yeah, I basically go to my hips. So I'm
do they actually touch though?
Yeah. So basically, inside more basically, so almost my fists are touching at the bottom of the movement rather than kind of like to my actual outside of my legs. I think you get a better pull from start to finish, and you get more range of motion in the movement as well. And I'll probably lift slightly more to the front with my lateral raise as well, rather than really directly to the side. You're able to handle a little bit weight as well. So.
And how high do you go exactly? Because some people say if you go a little bit higher, you can get more like.
I always make sure that it depends. If you're looking at like elbow height, I always kind of lead with the elbow. So the actual hand and the wrist are actually lower than my elbow. So rather than kind of like, you see a lot of guys like sort of pull back, so that actually your wrist is coming up higher. But I was always saying that my dumbbell is about ear level, bottom of the ear level. So.
And to prevent like muscles like the traps from really getting involved in the movement, like you know you drive the elbows when you're rolling. Like how do you engage the movement with the lateral?
Yeah. I've had people do that before, and you can actually see them almost like lifting with the trap. I think if you really struggle with that, go really light and sit on the end of a bench. So basically, you sit nice and upright, as you could just lift with a straight arm, and you'll find that you'll definitely use less traps in the movement. So you're almost trying to replicate that, with obviously with the standing as well. So that's definitely something you can look at. And some of that's a flexibility issue, and just the way people feel the movement. So almost very tight in the shoulders as they're lifting. So so sitting nice and upright, almost with a complete straight arm, and you might only need like 5 or 10 pound dumbbell type of thing, So just use that for pretty tough exercise. So.
Okay. What about so for rear delts, obviously the like reverse fly variations, like swings and all that stuff is good. But what about if you want to hit more rear delts during your rows? What are some tips for that?
For like on back day or?
Just if you want to do a row and you want to emphasize the rear delts more.
I actually really say I like it on a 45-degree bench, or just maybe slightly lower, with your chest on the front and your feet on the floor, and then get a dumbbell or barbell and pull high to the ears. So you don't need a lot of weight with it. It's actually a pretty difficult exercise to execute if your elbows are high enough. You will get a lot of people who will come low, basically doing back climb, but if you can come as almost like elbows to ears as you're pulling, you'll get a really nice movement on that. And then if you say superset that with like an isolation, like a normal fly, that's a really nice way to hit the rear delts. But not enough people do a lot of compound movements for rear delts. It's all kind of like bent over laterals.
Yeah.
You'll definitely get a bit more meat on them, obviously doing like heavy pulls and that kind of stuff, or even a really far over barbell, like a pause pull. So if you had like a 20 kilos either side, basically the bar's on the floor and you're parallel to the floor. It's almost like your old school bent over rows, how they used to do it. Basically pulling to the top of your chest. It's pretty hard, but it's quite a nice movement. So.
And this is on the 45, you said, or on the incline bench, you're saying, right?
Yeah, so just slightly lower than the 45. I mean, I'm not sure.
So like a 30-degree, and then you bring it to like your, your clavicle or something. Or?
Yeah, put your feet on the floor for purchase, so you can kind of actually drive some movement through the body. So and then that way you see your dumbbells are then obviously in front of you. And that's a really nice way to do it, especially if you have got some back issues. It's something that I basically was almost forced to do because I had some lower back problems. And it's kind of changed the way I sort of did rear delts for a long time. So yeah.
What about last question on rear delts? Then we'll the face pull. Like, what are some common like face pull mistakes you see? What height of the cable do you recommend?
Yeah, I think neutral is usually best for something like that. Same again, it's probably not an exercise is kind of like my go-to. I think that you're able to do a lot better with a barbell and a dumbbell. It's kind of nice as a finisher, maybe on a rope, but definitely just parallel rather than pulling from top to bottom. Even that, you can actually do it on we've got some nice like a dual cable row. You can do them as a double fly and on a double pull, which is quite nice. But yeah, elbows high from either mid neutral or low down rather than a high. I think you get a better movement on it, so less traps involved.
So you're saying like nipple level for face pull or lower?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
around nipple. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You can even do it on a low pulley row, So.
And then what? Then when you pull it to your face, you do like kind of like a back double bicep type thing, or?
Yeah, that's it. So you're sort of pulling here rather than pulling that way. You're pulling just into your body, and that's your stop position basically. So.
Okay. All right, perfect. So we're like an hour in now, so let's move on to arms, and we're approaching the end.
Cool.
So okay.
So yeah.
Let's go to arms. Okay, so let's talk about the close grip bench press, right?
Yeah.
People say it's the best tricep lift on the
Yeah.
planet, you know. And I
Yeah.
told you before, I'm more torso dominant, and a lot of my subscribers are actually more like they just don't feel the close grip bench in their arms at all, like no matter what they do. So what are
Okay.
some tips for this? Like, do you lock out the weight? Where do you bring the weight? Do you do it like after push downs and stuff? Do you do it with bands?
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
I actually think you need to. Where are they finding problems with the movement? So it's kind of like, for me, it always used to be wrist, but that always used to go so close on the barbell. So I pretty much go on a close grip bench, almost neutral. So it's almost like arms straight up.
shoulder width.
Yeah, almost shoulder width, just a tiny little bit in. So usually on the knurl on the bar, it's usually about this fourth finger that'll actually be on the bar where the knurl is. And the rest will be like the smooth part. It does depend on what bar you've got, I guess. But it's kind of like a good guide, I guess. And I would do mine and say just about an inch off the chest and that way. But it's just basically making sure that it's almost like if you watch like a powerlifter bench, you're sort of bringing the barbell down in like an arcing motion rather than straight down. But I mean, there's no doubt about it. For me, you do have to tuck your shoulders and traps back in the movement, but it's making sure that you're sort of pushing through and rounding the arms through at the bottom of the movement rather than just sort of pushing to make it big. But I mean it's one of my definite go-tos. I mean, I think I've always done close grip benches and heavy dips and things like that. But yeah, definitely like get good at the exercise. Get a good setup on the bench and just play around with the hand spacing because of what the ways you can feel it on the triceps. And if you're feeling it all on the chest, then again that can be a little bit of mindful muscle testing, but you're always going to get a little bit of chest work.
No, of course.
So
But
maybe
if you're getting like zero tricep, and it's something like you said, so you don't make it touch the chest. You make it like an inch in the chest.
yeah, I think when I go top heavy sets, sometimes I'm almost forced to go right down to the bottom of the chest. But same again, that depends on your hand spacing. If you're too close, no matter how flexible you are, you're just not going to get that down to touch the chest. So I said, if you go slightly further apart, you might find out just a little bit more comfortable, and you're going to get some chest in there, but you're going to get, there's going to be mostly triceps in that position. So, don't be afraid to go a little bit wider. So.
And do you always lock out?
Yes, yeah, I do, yeah.
Okay.
Think about that, but yeah, I do.
Okay. And let's say you're gonna do close grip. Do you usually like have a pump in your triceps by the time you already get to it? Like, do you do like your push downs and stuff like that?
Yeah, sometimes like I actually did it first today, which is neither here nor there, to be honest. I think that as long as your elbows are warm, I always go through the range of motion anyway with it. So I'll do a set with the bar at the start, and then I'll go to 20, 40. I went up to about 315 on a set of 5 today, or set of 4. At my top end set, so it's kind of like my heavy bread and butter movements. Then I just did like some push downs and some dips to finish. So, but yeah, it always tends to be that sort of like a heavy movement for me. So, and I'm quite good at pressing. That's kind of I'm almost squatting as much as I can close grip press. Do you know what I mean? So, one of them.
Crazy. What about let's talk more biceps now. Like people are saying the chin up is the best bicep lift on the planet. They're saying, gymnasts this, calisthenics that. And there are a lot of people who actually don't do any curls, and they actually reach like a respectable sized biceps off just chin up variations,
I couldn't say that's anything that I've really looked at as kind of like my arm workout. Like, you're going to get indirect. I might do back twice a week, so it gets a lot of workout in that alone. I think just like, I've always just done kind of like, it's almost like a 3/4 curl, so like a seated, lots of volume for biceps. I don't go that heavy on biceps at all, to be honest. It always tends to be like a volume scenario. So like the most I might go up to curling would be like a 45-pound dumbbell, like top end, because it's the same. I'm just not getting any more out of it by going any heavier. But lots of volume, lots of blood into the muscle. So I train it quick, but I've always been very fortunate. Like, it's always been a really good responding body part for me as well. I haven't got to do a lot, and I'll get a pump so that my arms grow. Do you know what I mean? That's why the first years of training, my arms were growing more backwards because I was probably so arm dominant. So, but I think you do have to. I wouldn't rate that as my exercise as I go through. Like a bit of a training program. It's definitely in my program as far as a close grip. Just put it on the back day. Just do it on the 2 back days. They're still going to get that if that's movement they want to do. Stick it on them days and do some weighted ones. But they need to be hit on them other angles really. So.
But why is it that some people they get big biceps off chin ups? Like, is it just because their mind muscle connection is so good with that with their biceps that like they just activate really well, or
I mean,
is
I
it the
think
way they're gripping the bar? Or
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I think it's probably just like a like a almost like a time scenario, because they're obviously spending that and doing that a lot. I mean, like powerlifters and stuff, they're not training arms, but they're doing a lot of assistance work of that type of exercise. So it's not getting overstimulation from anything else. But I mean, it's definitely not. As I said, it's like if someone was to say, like, okay, like write me an arm program, it wouldn't really be something I would really even stick in there. So,
no, for sure.
As an exercise, it's a great exercise, just not on an arm day for me. So,
No, I understand for sure.
On the 2 back days, of course, I do loads of them, but we know it would be to do more of the sort of standard curls and single arm curls and that on the other day. So,
I agree 100%. I think there's way better ways to hit your biceps, but
yeah.
But let's talk about like the brachialis now. So, what are some common mistakes you see? What are some lifts that you really like with the brachialis training?
Biggest mistake I think that people make with like a hammer curl is that it's kind of like simple mechanics. So when you're doing an arm curl, you almost like your thumb and your bicep to be in line. A lot of people will actually come out to the side. I don't think you actually need almost through the joint than you need to. So I actually do mine across body. So it's got stood up and actually across the body that way. And I actually come slightly in front and come to my ear rather than I do actually kind of like close to the body. So it's just slightly out. So you've actually got quite a nice gap between your actual wrist and your chest. And that's
okay.
It's a really comfortable movement. I'll do like 5, 5, 5, 5. So it's just kind of, rather than a single arm return, it's actually 5 on the same arm. So you're coming across the body in that motion rather than you are actually coming up this way. So there's actually a really nice way to do it, to be honest. So I do think a normal neutral curl and stuff is fine. Actually, you just get a lot more. I've always done my hammers that way and actually get more out of it. So it's something nice to try for sure.
It's interesting you say that, because it's me too. Like I recently just started my brachialis started coming up, and it's because of that, like the cross arm. But you don't. But I started doing it like 2 arms. Then when I'm really tired, like after the set, I just crank out some more reps. But do you ever do 2 arms or?
I think you swing less if you're doing it single arm.
Okay, so
I think that you have a little momentum in the curl, because it's just quite a difficult movement, especially if you're going heavy.
But it goes like, from what you're saying, it goes like what, like mid chest around, like you bring the.
I actually come to more like towards my chin, so I almost finish about here. So I'm almost
okay.
I've actually hit myself in the face a few times.
And how heavy would you go on this lift, like on your top end for 1 arm hammer?
What weight?
Yeah, around, yeah.
I'd up to say about a 45-pound dumbbell.
45. Like high reps and like.
Say like 5, 5, 5, 5. Most I would do is 15 on any arm, but just depends on what I'm doing and what kind of the nature of the arm workout that I'm doing as well. So
interesting. What about the long head of the triceps? Some people like myself have and I've had some subscribers ask me this too. They can't feel the long head working when they're doing like the seated dumbbell overhead extension. They feel a lot of delts.
Sorry, just say that again.
The seated overhead extension, the French press.
All right, and they can't feel it. Some of that, they're probably not got their elbows over enough. So let's say we're talking about a skull crusher, for example. I actually always do mine on a 45-degree angle. I sit my bum halfway up the bench rather than actually in the seat itself. And the actual elbow comes further over. So if you're doing it, let's say, to forehead, you tend to get a lot of pressure through the joint on the tendon. Whereas if you pull your arm further back, you actually get a nice stretch on the tendon. It's almost like doing like the old school
skull crusher, yeah.
Skull crusher, yeah, on like the machine. So it's always getting a really good stretch on the triceps. So do it on a 45-degree and sit up halfway on the bench, rather than sitting upright. Sitting upright, you get more tension on the elbow joint. So it just takes that all out. And that's my go-to for a tricep workout for sure.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram. The easy bar. The easy bar.
Yeah. So it looks good. Yeah. For dumbbell. So yeah.
You can go pretty heavy on that too, on that lift too, no?
What? Sorry.
You can go pretty heavy on that lift too, no?
Yeah. Right, yeah, that's it. I'm pretty strong on arms and pressing, that kind of stuff. You know, that's pretty good. I mean, I can get anywhere up to like a 60-kilo dumbbell on a normal dumbbell lift or something like that as well. So, but the position allows you to lose a lot of weight. I couldn't use half the weight if I was sat upright, like on a, let's say, like a back of a preacher curl, and you span around the other way. You can't use half as much weight, so it's actually just, it's more the angle and the bench, the stability it gives you sitting up on the bench rather than sitting in the seat.
Okay. Well, let's talk a bit of forms now. Like people,
Sure.
like let's say you're doing like you're sitting on a bench doing like a dumbbell wrist curl,
Yeah.
basic exercise. You see a lot of guys, either drug free or not, who have huge, massive forms, and it's kind of debatable. Some people don't do it, but you do see a number of people, especially bodybuilders, when they're doing the wrist curl, they let the dumbbell like kind of go all the way up to their
Yeah.
fingertips, and then
Yeah.
they like for extra stretch, and then they come
Yeah.
back up. Do you think this is actually necessary, or do you think it's just like grip it hard and just go up and
Not
down?
really, because it's wrist flexion, I guess. At the end of the day, you're only really working in that position. So, I mean, yes, your fingertips and your, I mean, I guess your forearm erector is going to be kind of worked to a certain degree in that movement. But I mean, same again, I think that it's almost kind of like something that maybe I've like done like in like spurts here and there with actual any direct forearm work. If you're doing like dead, you're warming up, stretching out, just your straps and that kind of stuff, you're going to get a degree of that movement anyway. So it's kind of like, unless you really do have, like say, good arms, but really weak forearms, then you may hit them directly. But I mean, it's not massively common, I don't think, where you see that someone with decent arms and small forearms. And it's probably, if they are, they maybe are training arms a lot, but they're not doing any bread and butter stuff like heavy deads, heavy rows. I mean, you get 2-3 plates aside on a rope without any straps on. That's pretty heavy. So it's kind of, that's going to be the best advice I can give, is that just do some of your basic stuff heavy without straps. Your grip and forearm strength will come up, rather than sit there spending ages doing like forearm curls. So,
So you don't do any wrist curls?
No, not in years. So yeah.
Okay. So you get a lot of your forearm work from like the hammer curls,
Yeah, just
the reverse curls and stuff like that.
Or just heavy back days and say like things like Coach Kip chins and that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, interesting. Okay, have like a couple more questions for arms.
Sure.
What about what do you think is the most effective way to do the cheat curl for bicep growth? Because everybody does it, and like so many people do it in a different way.
Sure. I actually really like to come up to about chin level. So like with an EZ bar, just slightly bent over from the hip, slightly not backwards. So actually lean forward into your curl and almost swing up to the top of your chin, and then a good negative. So you get a really nice pump off that as well. So
you get a really controlled negative, like you really
controlled negative, and you leave your elbows in the same position as you're coming down. So you come all the way up to the top, and let your elbows stay in the same position as you come down, not to put them back against your body and come down. So leave them in the same position, come down and lower, and then move back at the last minute. A lot of people will kind of like cheat curl, they'll move their elbows back, so you're almost kind of like using the front delts just to get in and out of the movement. So yeah, a little bit of swing and momentum is fine. Just as long as you've got a good negative, you'll get a nice movement.
Okay, what about offset grips? You see some guys doing supinated curls where they supinate at the top, and they'll have it more on like I think it's the thumb side. It's the thumb side, right?
You mean like shifted over to one side? You mean?
Yeah. The offset.
Yeah, it's probably a pretty nice little technique. It's something just different to try, but I wouldn't say it's kind of like it's imperative that you do it.
So not exactly, okay.
Like it's maybe a nice little thing you can do here and there, but as I said, it's a time scenario again. Train them often enough, and I really think that if you have weak arms, you should prioritize them more in your training. As far as like when I was trying to bring up arms, the best thing that I would usually do I'd have biceps and triceps on delt day on a Monday. But it would be compound triceps and then a pump bicep, so it'd only be like cables for a bicep. And then on my chest day, I would do like almost like a compound bicep curl. So if you can call it that, like heavy barbell curls and things like that, and maybe some close grip chins, something on that side of things. And then like pump triceps, just some push downs and things like that. And then a separate arm day on its own on a Saturday. So it's actually almost training arms 3 days a week, but it's almost so they've got time to recover because you're not taking them, the pump sets to failure. It's just kind of like a bit of a pump, so it's just time. You're getting lots of frequency in, and that works really well for us. So.
Mm. Okay, I'm gonna pretty much finish it off with some chest, and then
Sure.
probably wrap it up a bit after that.
No worries.
So, what are some? Obviously, you're not powerlifters, and we're trying to build the biggest chest possible.
Yeah.
And this is not like when we train. It's not like a powerlifting meet where it's like you have to do everything exactly like the judges say.
Yeah.
So, I'm assuming that you use constant tension when you're doing your barbell press. Like I'm assuming, I don't think. Do you lock out when you
I
do your
do lock
barbell?
out. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you
I've
actually
always
do lock out.
Yeah, I think that, especially in regards to like triceps, I think that the more that it's basically like a same again, it's a time scenario. So if you just think the amount of times, especially if you do have weak triceps, if I've spent, let's say 10 years and every time I've trained, a bench press or a press of some sort and I've locked out, the tricep is just getting that more work. I don't think that you say, keeping the tension through the muscle. If you're on the heavy lift and you're doing the heavy compound, you almost have to. You have to lock the full movement out. I'm not saying that I wouldn't do on like back down sets, like a pump set.
Okay.
I use kind of like a 3/4. Of course it is, but on them like heavy sets like that, yeah, definitely worth doing a lockout on the movement.
Well, on the heavy sets you lock out for sure. Okay, I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. What about? Okay,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, like probably the biggest thing that changed my chest development from probably say in my early 20s was just moving a lot closer. Everyone always kind of says like you should bench on the rings, like your little finger on the the ring on the nail. And it was always wide for me. I never really got it. As soon as I started moving more neutral, I just got a lot more thickness to the middle of my chest. People say, how can I thick out the middle of my chest? I'm like, do more close grip bench stuff. I guarantee you'll get a thicker chest from doing it. So even the same on an incline, so I almost bench neutral. So we're talking shoulder width again, and just chuck your elbows in slightly, and you'll say you're good range of movement. So I always touch chest and all the movements, and always lock out. So it's a full range of spectrum, not just kind of working in a
Okay.
But that was one of the biggest things that I changed, and it was a notable improvement within even a